decisions made by the engineers on what mic to use.
Well, not so much the recording equipment that they're using, but when they mix it. Basically, what I've learned over many, many years, listening to music now, because we can all go on the web and we can listen to the Beatles like 25 takes, and you say, man, what were they trying to do here? Just to give you an example, if you listen to I Saw Her Standing There by the Beatles, you would never know how good of a guitarist George Harrison is.
Well,
but you separate that and you listen to that, my God.
But the original was mono.
But that was 63, he did that.
But it could be argued that the 2-channel version, which came out, 5 years ago, wasn't what they intended, because what they want, then it was all mono. It was just they were recording recording on 2 channels just for convenience.
But that's okay. I don't understand why you would pay for an orchestra and have an oboe, which is not a very unusual instrument, and then just totally destroy it in the record. Why would you do that? You're paying. Now I understand some of these companies they were on retainer like a lawyer. I don't give a shit. You can earn 100 hours to we don't care. You're not charging us by the hour.
Well, there's an old joke about the mastering engineer. So, musician and a mastering engineer are walking across the desert, and they're hot and they're parched and they're thirsty and they have no water. And they come across an oasis, and there is this pool of beautiful, cool, still water. And they rush up, but before the musician can take a drink, the mastering engineer unzips his flies and pees in it. And the musician says, "What are you doing?" And the engineer says, "I'm making it better."
Yeah.
And that's the answer to your question.
Yeah. I guess my real point is why don't people in the industry, especially now, dropping 10, 15,000 on a pair of speakers is no big deal, I guess, compared to what's out there. Why don't these manufacturers say, listen, you better get your shit together and start making these recordings good enough for our speakers?
How do they apply that pressure? How? I mean, there is no causal loop there. One thing that's interesting is that the engineer George Massenberg, whom I know, is now teaching at McGill in Montreal. And he's teaching recording technology, so he gets all these students and they say, okay, what reverb plugins should I use? What equalization should I use? What's the best compressor? And George says, here's a pair of mics, go and make a recording.
Right.
And only when you've learnt how to use microphones and how to capture sound can you come back to my class and we can discuss all that stuff.
Right, but we had that problem like in the 70s when guys would say that their amplifier was 5,000 watts when it was really 2.
Yes.
So they came up with a standard.
Yeah. But there isn't any standard in.
Yeah, but the recording industry, right? The RA, what is it? The RA?
The RA curve is a standard for cutting LPs, but there's no standard on what I've been talking about, which is the creative process. And they can get.
Well, maybe it's about time.
Well, and they get trapped into these ridiculous situations where. If you listen to Adele's 21, she has a wonderful voice. They're great arrangements. They're good songs. The whole thing is dynamically, it's squashed to hell because they think, oh, that's what will sell. Except they're not thinking about who their end user is, who's going to be basically...
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, they're not
These
thinking
kids today are not like we were. We got it rammed down our throats.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. You don't like it, too bad. Go somewhere else.
But
nowadays, they're telling you. They're telling us.
Right, but they're not.
We don't like it, we're not buying it.
Well, and...
They're not buying hi-fis. They're buying a pair of headphones and a Walkman.
Well, what's the time? Let me play you...
Just want to ask one quick question. What, more and more manufacturers are not making CD players anymore. I mean, do you think it's going to be a demise at some point? I mean, a lot of us have... tremendous amount invested too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a ton of analog, but
well,
records and CDs, and now what are we expected to buy?
I mean,
well, you can rip your CDs to files and play them on your computer. By the way, I haven't mentioned the system.
They don't sound the same.
Haven't mentioned the system. My thanks to Audio Den for setting this up. Wilson Sabrina speakers, which we like very much on the magazine, and in a scoop on our next issue, we have voted these our product of the year for 2016. Moon by Sim Audio 780D digital processor. We reviewed that last August, and this is actually the very sample that we reviewed. Sim Audio, preamp, power amp, transparent cabling. I'm playing the files with Pure Music on my MacBook Pro. This takes care of all the setting the sample rate and everything that is appropriate for the file being played. The files I'm playing are a mix of AIF, WAV, and the Night and Day was an MP3. That's all I could find of it on the internet. So I'll finish by playing you one more recording. This is the Portland State Chamber Choir again. This is another modern work. It's by the composer Eric Whittaker this time, who is another one of these young people. I think he's 40, who is unbelievably talented. His style is, it's tonal music, but he creates tone clusters, which if you look at them on the score, you think, well, how on earth do they sound musical at all? Because they're just blocks of notes like that. But it works when he does it. It's called Water Night, and this is, I recorded this last year, 2015, and I told you earlier, I shipped all my stuff out to Portland for the recording session, and last year it was going to cost $700 to ship it all back. And I thought, no, I can hire a car for that. So I rented a car and drove it all back.
That's right.
Great vacation. It took me 4 days coast to coast, but my
Do
goodness.
you live on the East Coast? Is this where,
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, so it was a great opportunity for a break. So this is Water Night, one of his first